I'm always on the lookout for a great deal, so when I saw this Legacy-equipped T1 Duplex for a really great price, I thought this would be a steal. Or was it a scam? There's no way I could have two T1 Duplex duds in a row, right? Right? Last summer, I picked up this TMCC-equipped Lionmaster T1 Duplex, and it wasn't exactly running right when I first got it. So I contacted Trains.com, where I bought it from. They said, send it back to us and let us have a look. They fixed it, sent it back, and it's been working great on my rails ever since. I love this engine. But later on, I found out they made an even better version of this Lionmaster engine. Yes, there's a legacy version that they made, same shell and everything, same size, able to run on tighter curves like all the Lionmaster engines can, but this is legacy equipped and then some. Because this thing has LED lights up front, smoke and whistle smoke, which some of the later Lionmaster engines had, but this is an earlier legacy engine, which means that it's got road name specific crew dialogue, which the later Lionmasters don't have. They kind of have your more generic sound set.
Betsy 5511 is coupled up. Test complete. Can we depart to the main line? Over. Betsy 5511, you've got the green. Over. Acknowledged. Cleared outbound. 5511 out.
It's kind of a shame that they've been doing that with more of the legacy stuff, but either way, I thought this essentially had the best list of features on it for a semi-scale engine, and the T1's one of my favorite designs anyways. It's just so sleek with that shark nose look up front. Even before I knew what this engine was, I remember seeing a picture of this in a book as a kid. And then later on when I got into O-Gauge trains and I found out, oh, that's that engine. Oh, that's Pennsylvania Railroad, that's the Duplex. They make one for semi-scale? I want it, I have to have it. This thing's so cool watching around the rails. So getting a even better equipped version of it, plus it's a separate number. This is 5511, which is ironically the same number as the older scale version they used to make. And this one's 5514, so I can run them both and have two separate engines running around for the Pennsylvania Railroad on my Union Pacific themed railroad. Regardless. Yeah, so I was super stoked when I finally found one of these listed at a very reasonable price. And the main reason it was, it's got a little bit of a chunk missing from it. The plow here has had a bit of an accident, but it was listed as running and fine and all that stuff. And I figured I could fix that, especially since the seller was kind enough to include the part that was broken off. So repairs wouldn't be too bad. Maybe a little bit of paint to help fix it up, and it'd be good as new. And then I saw how it arrived. I already knew right from the get-go when I saw the box that there was probably going to be more issues than just a broken front plow. So yeah, this thing should have come in a pretty thick styrofoam box when it was, you know, new with Lionel. And that's a big reason why if you are going to get rid of any of your boxes when you're collecting these trains, you know, box cars and stuff that are lightweight, not a big issue. Do a couple wraps of bubble wrap and send them and ship them, no problem. But when it comes to engines, yes, those boxes are huge to keep, but it is so much easier and safer to ship them in those big, thick styrofoam boxes to keep things from happening to them during shipping. Because this box not only wasn't really that padded, but you can literally see it kind of squeezing its way out. This thing probably needed a little bit better packing job. And it was a shame because once I put it on the line, instantly I knew there was something wrong. There was no sound. There was no light from the backup light on the back of the tender. There was no rear electrocoupler. So I'm like, maybe there's some connection problems through the wireless coupler. Because the wireless tether that's on these, sometimes they get misaligned. I checked that out, and that was a little bit bent up, probably, again, from the shipping. I straightened things out, still nothing. So the problems weren't exactly getting any better with my diagnosis of the engine for day one. I contacted the seller, and he was helpful and started messaging back and forth with me, trying to help me troubleshoot this engine. Other than the electrical problems that I was experiencing, the rest of the engine visually was in great shape except for, you know, the plow, which I already knew about. So, day two, I'm downstairs in the train room here again, working on stuff, trying to troubleshoot, and it's still not coming around. And some guys started suggesting maybe the main power board has gone bad. Ugh. Finding parts for that is going to be pretty much impossible because unfortunately, Lionel has pulled all of their boards off of their parts site. So finding, electronic components, especially the brains of these engines to be able to run them is really difficult to do, even though this isn't that old of an engine. Thankfully, I have a lot of Lionmaster engines here on the secondhand Overland. So I opened up the tender on one of mine that was working, took the power board out of it, put it inside the tender on this to see if it would work. Because if you just put the tender on the track by itself, you should get some sound effects. And I wasn't getting that from my initial testing with this. So I placed this guy on the track, the sounds went up. That was the first time I had heard this engine make any sort of a sound. And powered it back down, and then I hooked it up to the engine to see if that solved the problem. Oh, there we go. And it sort of did. The rear light was working again. The rear electrocoupler was working again. The sounds obviously were working. And the engine was moving, but the sound effects weren't making any sort of chuffing sound. And I noticed there was no puffing coming from the smoke. I'm like, oh, well, maybe there's something wrong with, synchronizing or getting information from the wheels to tell the sound effects and the chuff that they're moving. So I started diving into that stuff again. And then, when I put it back together to see if I had found the problem, then it just shot off down the line like a rocket. Which, admittedly, these things went like 120 miles an hour at one point. They were beating the tar out of the rails back then, and they were kind of not so good for the line maintenance, we'll say. But so that's when I noticed, okay, there's another problem here. And things just kind of kept snowballing with things. I found out later, after a little bit more testing, that the antenna connection was kind of dodgy. And when I removed the antenna, a little tiny piece of metal came out from the inside of it. So that was likely in contact when I started testing stuff. And then when I flipped things upside down to remove things and get the screws out and take the shell off, it was getting moved around. And eventually taking the antenna out of the mounting point kind of spelled disaster for that. So more antenna issues, and then, of course, still trying to figure out, okay, yes, I fixed it with the board, but it just means one of my other engines doesn't work. So this was just looking more and more like a bad idea to hang on to. And I didn't want to break anything further from what I had already done. So again, I was working with the seller, trying to see if I could just wash my hands of this thing and refund things, because it had been like 4 nights worth of tinkering on this thing, and I was getting pretty frustrated. It's at this point where most of you are assuming that this is where the scam comes in because, well, eBay scams are kind of an accepted thing really at this point. Yes, there is buyer protection and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just end up with the dud and you're in the hole for that. And I was really worried that had happened to me with one of my favorite engines of all time and a legacy version of that engine that I had been searching for quite a while. I had echoed this sentiment to the seller a couple times before because I'm like, thanks for your help. I would really like to get this thing rolling. I don't want to have to return it, especially considering now I have to figure out a better way to ship it back so nothing worse happens to it in shipping. So when I started talking with the seller about figuring out a way to return this thing, he was okay with that. But he did something that I didn't expect. This is something that's kind of rare on eBay. You typically don't find people that really care about what's going on. And I really got the idea from the seller that he cared about this engine, about the fact that I'd been looking for one for a while, about all the time and effort that I had put into trying to troubleshoot this thing. So he refunded me every penny on the engine. But he said, keep the engine. I'm like, what? Are you sure? Yes, keep the engine. Fix it. I want to see it running again, and I know you would too. With the funds I'm refunding back to you, you could send it to a shop, maybe track down a board to put in it, and whatever you think it's worth when you're done, just send me some funds afterwards, and we'll call it a day. And I was just beside myself. Like, I get to not worry about trying to ship this thing back. I get to give this thing a second shot, and I get the funds to be able to explore those options. Because I'm not just going to take the money and run and just leave this thing on display on a shelf and just call it dead in the water. No, I do want to get this thing running. In the same way that I sense that he's a good guy that really cares about these engines and the people that he's selling them to, I care about this engine and I want to give it a good life here on the secondhand Overland. So it's not quite fixed yet. So this doesn't exactly have the full happy ending that I was hoping to give you guys, but I'm still giving it a shot. And better yet, there's a bunch of you that are hopefully still watching at this point. If you've got any suggestions on stuff to do for this engine and get her running again right, leave me a message down in the comments below, or you can get in touch with me on the Secondhand Overland on Instagram. But yeah, you guys have helped me fix a bunch of other stuff before. This community does not disappoint, and apparently that community extends to even eBay sellers, because big thank you to that guy for helping me out with this thing. I can't wait to get her running and to give you the good news and send you footage of it running alongside 5514 over here. So thanks so much for watching. I wanted to put this out there because there's not always happy endings to these kinds of eBay scam stories. And when there are, a lot of times that happy ending comes much further on down the line. So I'm not saying eBay's a safe place to shop. There's still risk involved with it. But for the most part, if you reach out to the seller, if you work some things out, and if you're really trying hard to get this stuff to work, then good things happen because they sense that you want to make this work as well. At least this guy did. And I'm very grateful that he did. I can't wait to get this thing running and to show him and to enjoy it here on the lines as well. So yeah, if you've got any suggestions on other stuff to look for or find, otherwise I'll keep exercising my avenues of repair stuff and see if and when I can get this guy rolling. And we'll have a video on that again soon. So please subscribe so you don't miss that or the rest of our super fun content that my son and I have been doing here. Thanks so much for the support. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next one.